as I was putting this together, I was thinking, how do I, it's the intro slide, what are we really getting at here? And I was thinking about, this digital era that we live in and kind of how to sum it all up. But I was thinking, when I was a kid, I was ripe age of 11 in 2000. I remember, and Bill and I were talking about this digital revolution, right? Y2K. The world is changing. We've got the internet, and we're going to move all this stuff into a digital format where you can go see things in a browser or a software app, right? And we've, 24 years later, we've pretty much done that with almost anything and everything that should be digital, right? And we have all these softwares that allow us to harness the power of our digital data and to connect data in separate software systems using various connections and automations. So to me, the next big revolution or the big thing, now that we're in this digital era, is automation. We'll leave out that really the next big thing is AI, but that'll be a topic later when it takes over my job and I'm unemployed. But as we move further into this digital world and our reliance on it, it's so important to have workflows that are not only documented but are efficient, right? So we want these enhancements to be accomplished by, maybe we need to review our workflows that we do daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, right? You do things once or twice a year. It's still automation. If it's something you can automate, can save you time and money and reduce your mistakes, right? Those are the three big things that at CloudPoint I like to focus on is how can we streamline workflows, maybe automate some or all of it to save our clients time and money and ultimately reduce those mistakes. The human error component of any sort of work you're doing with data management is always there. So if we can find some automation that can maybe account for some of those mistakes that we learn along the way and take care of those and ultimately keep our hands off of it as much as possible, will ultimately make things quicker and more efficient. So today we're just going to look at some of the techniques that you can use in Power Automate. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other softwares that are out there for this type of work. And then the real exciting thing, the last 10, 12 minutes, I'll show some demos of kind of things we've done for clients in the past and just kind of the more advanced but cool things you can do. So today we're focusing on Microsoft's Power Automate. It is widely used in this realm that we focus on here at CloudPoint, which is GIS, but namely Esri's ArcGIS softwares. And it does require an Office 365 subscription. And on top of that, for most of the stuff you would want to do with ArcGIS, you're going to need a premium Power Automate license that runs about $15 per user. So, most of our clients already have Office 365. So adding on that Power Automate license, the premium license to one or more users to kind of do these workflows, it's usually pretty simple. I do feel obligated to mention that there is another big one in the world of ArcGIS and automation, which is Make, formerly Integromat. And it does work well, and I'll cover just kind of the similarities real quick. But Make, if you're looking at that and you want to use that instead of Power Automate, it does require an annual subscription and has tiered pricing. So it's out there. It's a little bit different as far as the subscription and how they monitor and how you use it. But recently, I've used SnapLogic with a client, and that, along with Zapier, these types of other automation softwares, they still work with ArcGIS, but the things that we're going to look at today, which is like the connectors, they don't have inherently, so that's why they're not part of the big two, but you still can use them. So I did want to mention that we have done some automations with Zapier and SnapLogic that work with ArcGIS and do some of the things that we're looking for. So those are possible if you have those, if you're forced to use those. It's just a little bit more tedious to get things going. But Power Automate, big thing that we're focusing on today are the connectors. The connectors are the base of everything you're going to do in Power Automate. You have what they call a flow. starts with a trigger, which is where you're watching for something to happen, or you're doing your trigger is maybe a time-based thing. You want to do something every hour or every Monday or every 3 months, whatever. Then you use these connectors, these items that you connect to other softwares and other data sources, and you do things with the data. So when we look at the connectors relevant to Esri and ArcGIS, they have a pre-built connector for Survey 123, where you can watch for survey submissions, new submissions, and edits. If you have a workflow where people are editing their previously sent submissions. And they have another big one that's relatively new and unique to Power Automate, which is the ArcGIS connector, which allows you to interact with feature layers and do some other things like geocoding, data enrichment that you would do maybe like in the analysis portion of ArcGIS. And then there's custom webhooks. So if you're in ArcGIS Enterprise and you have Survey 123 forms, the Power Automate connector does not inherently work with ArcGIS Enterprise forms built and published and running in ArcGIS Enterprise. So there's a great blog article that walks you through. If you want to use this type of workflow for Survey 123 forms, you just kind of have to go in and make a custom webhook and then bring that into Power Automate. But looks and acts the same once you get it built, not too difficult, and allows you to do some of the stuff with your surveys in ArcGIS Enterprise. The other big types of connectors that we'll look at and we'll see in some of the demos today are like the email one. So if you have, maybe you have some other email service or an SMTP server that you want to use for emailing, you can connect that. It has Microsoft O365 and Google Workspace connectors, which allow you access to all of your software, your documents and spreadsheets and your calendar and Teams and all kinds of stuff. There's other connectors for things like Slack that we use internally, and I mean thousands of connectors, but those are the big ones we'll focus on today. And then there's templates, and I put this in here so we can go look at them real quick. But some of the big ones, when you look at pre-made templates, pre-made flows that you just say, I want to build this, click it, log into your various softwares that it's using, and boom, you're off and running. So sending an email when a survey response is submitted, that is a very, very, very common one. It was kind of how this automation got started with ArcGIS, was with Survey 123. And then another one is that we've used is getting data from a feature layer in ArcGIS Online and exporting that to a CSV. And there's many others, and we'll just show them here if I can jump out of this. If you go in here and you search ArcGIS, you'll see they have 10 templates that are using this ArcGIS connector. So you can do things like send a Teams message when a record is created in your feature layer, or maybe you want to add XY data to a spreadsheet of addresses. You can do that using the analysis. You can create a feature layer in ArcGIS Online from SharePoint, right? So there's all these things you can do, and these are pre-built templates. So open it, log into ArcGIS Online, log into Teams, and then configure it to do what you want to do. And the other big one, if we look at the connectors, if we type in Survey 123, you can see they have 8 pre-built connectors for watching Survey 123 forms. So the big one, send an email when somebody submits something. You can get access to the data that's in your Survey 123 submission, so you can format a nice email or PDF and do things with that data that you may need to send somewhere else. The third one is another common one where you get a submission and you want to put that in a spreadsheet, right? Maybe you have people that don't necessarily need to see it in ArcGIS Online or Portal, and they just use that data in a spreadsheet somewhere else. And then there's all these other ones, but you can see that they've got these pre-built for Microsoft, and then they've got the same ones for the Google Workspace, right? So CloudPoint's Google Workspace, so we use a lot of these Gmail and Sheets instead of Outlook and Excel. So just wanted to touch on that before we go any further. But so what we have here is all these things we can do. And I wanted to show, without getting into Power Automate, kind of what this looks like. So a very common one, Survey 123 to an email, right? So the trigger that we talked about, where it starts, what it's looking for to run, we're saying, hey, when an attendee, and this is what we use internally, when somebody fills out a registration form for a showcase we're doing that we've put out, we want to get that response, get those answers to those questions, send an email to ourselves, to the marketing people, so they can track and put that in a spreadsheet, know who's coming, where they're coming from, right? And then we also have it to where it sends an email to the person, the registrant, and using the email that we're requiring this form, they get an email with a separate body that says, hey, thanks for registering. Our showcase is on this day, this time. It's at this place. We put in a link to Google Maps, so you can see like, hey, here's, if you want to just click this link, it'll open in Google Maps and show you where you're going, and a few other items in there. But it's a really simple flow, literally 3 steps. Watch for a new submission, take that data, format a body of an email, send it to ourselves so we know somebody just registered, and then send a response to the registrant saying, thanks for registering, here's your data, here's kind of what it looks like. So as an example of what the email looks like when we get it, I went in there and did a dummy registrant, said, hey, Tiger Woods is coming to our showcase. And we get a summary like, hey, somebody registered, here's their data, right? So we're taking the answers to the questions, his name, organization, title, email, and if they have any dietary restrictions, we're formatting that into a nice little simple body of an email, and we know what's going on. Another common one, and this one we'll see a demo on in a little bit, is you get some sort of auto-generated email. In this case, we were working with someone that gets emails when their electric meters go out of power, and then also when they come back on. So they got this standard email with a standard body, standard title, subject line, and we wanted to parse what's in this email body and then use that to update the corresponding feature in ArcGIS Online and change the symbology. So we're getting an email, we see a list of 1 or more meters. We go use the ArcGIS connector to update the attributes of those meters and say powers up or powers off. And we'll see that in the demo. So overall, this is what it looks like. You want to see, the flow that you're building. This is what it looks like. You start with the trigger over here. You have, hey, when an email, a specific email arrives with a specific subject, maybe it's to a specific person, maybe, there's all these parameters you can say it has to meet before. That's really what we want to use as our trigger. Then we go through, we create some variables, we parse the email body and get the table of data. We parse those tables to see which meters are in there. And then if the email is about an outage, then we go over here, and for each meter that's in the email, we update their attributes to say the outage field is yes. If it's a power off email, power up email, then we do the same thing, but we change that value to no on that feature. And then always important to have some catches so that it doesn't totally fail. Say, hey, if for some reason it's not either one of those, send me a notification, right? I want to know, like, for some reason that email failed. Another one is if for some reason there's no meters, right? Then send me a notification, say like, hey, there was an email that came through that met your criteria, but for some reason didn't have meters. So always think about those catches that you need to put in, because if you don't, it's going to fail, and then you've got to go do some work and figure out why. So what this looks like when it runs, we get an email about, let's say, 12 meters that have power off seamlessly in a matter of seconds. Our feature layer is updated, those fields are updated, and the symbology changes. So in this case, this could be a public web app or an app or a dashboard or something that you allow the users to go see, hey, my power's out, and now you can see if you're down here, like, okay, something's going on. I see all my neighbors have power out. If you're this person up here, it's like, yeah, that's just me, something weird's going on. So just that feedback that you can automate and send to your constituents. So we talk about Make, that's the alternative to Power Automate when we're talking about ArcGIS and automation. It has many of the same connectors. And again, their subscription's a little bit different, and it's based on operations. So just take note of that if you're going to go that route. And again, big connectors in Make, if you are interested. They have the same ones for Survey 123. They don't have the ArcGIS connector allowing access to feature layers inherently. They do have a cool one that Power Automate doesn't have, which is where you can watch field maps for edits, right? So just like server 123, you want to watch for something to happen in a specific map that's used in field maps. You can do things with the data that was edited or added. They do allow custom webhooks that we talked about with feature layers. So if you're in ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, I think it's 11.0 started, you can add a webhook to a feature layer and then do some of the things you would do with the ArcGIS connector and Power Automate and watch for edits and ads and do things. They have the same email, Microsoft, Google connectors, and thousands of others. And just to show you, if you're interested, they also have templates that you can use to get started. So if you're looking for server 123 templates in Make, you have the same ones we saw in Power Automate. Watch a survey, send me an email, right? A couple of other ones. So click it, get started, log in, boom, you're watching your survey, you're sending yourself an email. So now that we have about 10 minutes left, I'm going to show the demos, right? This is where you want to see how this all works. So we'll go back. I'm going to leave this and we'll go into Power Automate. And so here in Power Automate, this is the screen you're going to see. I'm looking at my flows. I've logged in. I have a list of flows here. Some of these are turned off, some just demo stuff. But the ones today we're going to look at will be this Nighthawk service update. And this was the one you saw pictures of in the slides. So if I go in here and I go back to this, you can see it looks like the picture when an email arrives. And I have some parameters. I'm saying only trigger it if it's to me. The subject has the word service alert from Nighthawk. And then you can even have labels that are being applied to that you watch for if you really want to get granular and making sure you're watching for the right emails. And then we go through here with some variables and parse the table. So you can see here, if I look at this code, and I'm parsing the body, the HTML, the raw HTML in the body, and looking for things like table tags. And we're doing something with that. We're going to parse that data later. So then in the meter IDs, I'm using the XPath function where you can read XML data, the body of the email in XML format, and use that to really get to a granular spot or a group of features, group of text, the XML text. So in this one, we're looking at, we're going to parse the table and use the table data option, every other table data input, and that's my meter ID. So I'm getting a list of meter IDs, and then I'm seeing how many there are, and I'm going to loop through all of those meters. And this is where you're like in your loop. If any of you are familiar with loops and coding, this is Power Automate's version. For the meters in the list, check to see what type of email it is, and then go ahead. And this is my ArcGIS connector, this yellowish orange one. And we're saying, hey, go look in my content, go to this feature layer called meters outage status. And for each one, update the field of power outage to yes. For each meter that was in that email, change it to yes, which will ultimately change the symbology. So same thing here, change it to no, and do some other stuff if random things happen. So to show that, I'm going to, here's an example of the email. And this one is an outage notification. So power is off at this 1 meter with the serial number. So if I forward this to myself and kind of replicate what the automated email would do, it shows up in my inbox. It's got some data. And you can see if I go to the subject, I don't want that. So if I send this to myself, you see I got an email. The subject is service alert from Nighthawk. So it meets that criteria. It's to me. And if I go back in here and we leave this, it takes a couple minutes for it to catch it, but we should see, as I refresh this, it's going to run, and you can see the duration extremely fast. So it's parsing these meters, and it's going to update my feature layer. So if I refresh this, hopefully it caught it. Maybe. And all right, so 19 seconds ago, it saw that my email came in and it ran. So If I go in here and I go to my bookmarks where I know my meters are, you can see that this meter has changed to purple. So this was the meter in my email. I can click on it. I can see that power outage has been marked yes. And you can see it was last updated by me 1 minute ago. So this is going in there and updating that attribute, which is really being used to drive the symbology and change that every time an email comes in. So, if you had constituents, they have live access to this map. They can see the status of their meter and whether power has been marked on or off. And the reverse of that is if I come in here and I look at this one where it says power is back on, if I forward this to myself, so the way this works, in the real world, when the power has been registered as back on, it loops through and sends an email to the user, and I'm going to send that to myself. So now I've got an email that power is back on, and within watching for it to run within a minute or two, it will, checks your inbox every so often. I think it's every 2 minutes. So it's not truly real time when it comes in, but you can set that to run as often as possible. But we're going to see that once this runs, this purple feature that has been marked as power out is going to change back to green because my flow is going in and changing that attribute for me. So if I run this here, I've got so 6 seconds ago it ran again, and now when I refresh this map, in a perfect world, we should see that now that meter is back to green. So a really cool example of what you can do with standardized emails that you get. And another one of those good examples is if we go back to my flows, I have another one. For those of you in Illinois, if you're a municipality, you're aware that Julie is our 811 ticketing system. And you likely get emails every time someone submits a request for Julie locates in your area. And what happens here, I got an example, an XML file, and we can see that if I go into edit, I'm going to watch my inbox, same type of thing. I'm watching for when a new email arrives. It would have the subject of, Julie, new Julie ticket or something, whatever that subject is from Julie. And then the body of the email in XML is going to look something like this, where it has all of your fields of data. It even has this best fit rectangle with coordinates and and some other items. So we can parse that XML, create a JSON object that matches what the add feature REST API call looks for. So we have geometry that we're getting from the geometry that was in our email using that XPath function again. And then we're also going through the email and getting the various attributes and their values. Same thing, we're creating a record in a feature layer, and that payload takes into account our geometry from the JSON object that we created, and then all of the values that were in the email that we sent. And so what happens is then if we run this, it's going to create a feature layer. And I have another example of a catch where we're saying, hey, if for some reason the layer was inaccessible or was something wrong in our JSON, send me a notification that says, hey, this one failed. So I know I need to go in and look at it, and we're not assuming that it ran. If it did run fine, just go ahead and stop, right? Terminate with success. So if I run this, and we're going to save this, and then I'll test it. Another cool thing in Power Automate, you can test things while you're building them. So you can manually go send yourself an email and watch it work. Or in my case, for this demo, I was running a test earlier, so I can go back and say, hey, use that same data that we got when an email came in and run this test. So if I run this, we're going to give it a little bit of time to work through here. It's acting like it's watching for an email, it's reading the XML, and then it's going through here and adding a new feature in our feature layer. So if I go back in here and I go to where I know this Julie ticket is, you see a blue polygon that was just created from this flow. So if I scroll in here now, maybe my crews like to use this web map and field maps out in the field. They can see it's on the map. They can go in here, see some of the details, see where it is. They can click on it and get even more details that were in that Julie email. And maybe you have a field where they say, hey, this one's done. They mark it and it changes symbology or drops off the map. So a really cool way to streamline things that were really taking a lot of time for some of our clients. They were going back and printing off these emails at lunchtime. Maybe they do it in the morning. They have to come back. It was constant, back and forth from the office to get this data. And now they get it in real time in a web map. So really cool stuff that you can do. And quick examples. We don't have a lot of time, but just really wanted to show some of the awesome things you can do with Power Automate. And truly, the sky's the limit. There's a ton of documentation on what you might need help with. Power Automate has a great community. So Esri also has tons of blog posts about how to do some of these things in Make and Power Automate if you're interested. And yeah, that's it. I mean, it's powerful stuff. Save you time, save you money, and hopefully make your users a little bit happier if they don't have to keep going back to the office for things they can get on their web maps automatically.
Awesome. We do have a couple. Yeah, we got a couple.
All right.
Not too crazy here. This was early on, and I could have answered, but I missed what you said. The $15 per month on the premium license, is it per month or annually?
$15 per user per month.
Per user per month.
Gotcha. One thing to note is that it is relatively easy to transfer. So, at CloudPoint, we have, I think, a couple that are in our license pile. So if I need them, I can go in there and transfer it to myself and use it. I can go in there and transfer it to another user if they're going to use it for a little bit, and just kind of pass it around if you don't necessarily need every single person to have their own dedicated license.
Yeah. Yeah, let's try to knock out a couple more here. Are you aware of an option to send a text when a survey response is submitted?
Oh, yeah, maybe. I mean, so they're saying it's available in Make.
Yeah, that's so. The side note was that this person saw a presentation at Magic, which for those of you that don't know, that's the Mid America GIS conference, Magic conference, where someone did it with Make. But wasn't sure if that was an option for, I see SMS.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's where you would maybe go look for your connectors or Google it. Honestly, the Power Automate community, you can see, yeah. So somebody will walk you through the SMS connection. Send an SMS. Yeah. So send a text and an email. So yeah, should be totally possible.
Oh, look at that. One of our, thank you, Seth. One of our good clients, Seth Stark in Decatur, Illinois. You can send text and Power Automate using the SMS email to text function. Wonderful. Thank you, folks. Let's see. We got a couple more. That one's a little long. We might come back to that one. Jump over here. Any tips on checking features for null in New Designer? It's easily done in Old Designer with the preset function.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the New Designer it's got some quirks, but I honestly, in mine, I use the if length is greater than or equal to or greater than 0. So there's an if statement and then a greater than or equal to or a greater than when you look at the length. So get the length of the object you're looking at, maybe as an answer to a question in a survey, and then evaluate if the length is greater than 0, and then if that's true, then give it this value. If it's not, give it a default value of empty brackets or empty quotes, or some other value.
I've got a couple of questions that kind of along the same lines here. People are asking me about connections, right? Their connection drops between ArcGIS Online, Survey 123. And you're having to come in and recreate these flows. Yeah. Is there any tips or advice?
So here we've recently found that if you go to Survey 123 and you have your trigger, you can actually, so your ArcGIS Online, your connections are valid for 14 days. So if your flow doesn't run for 14 days, it's going to lose that token that it uses to authenticate. So what you can do is set a flow that just runs every day and looks for new survey responses. And what that does is it triggers it to run without watching for survey responses. And in theory, it should refresh your token. So you could run it every 10 days and hopefully keep that refresh token alive.